Hello and welcome to a special edition of WEBN. I'm Joy Powers and we'll be talking about nonprofit organizations in the Boston area and how they affect the people in surrounding communities. First, we'll talk about Casa Minha, a nonprofit that works to help families struggling with issues of domestic violence. This is an issue that affects millions of Americans. It includes acts of physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and willful intimidation. And a recent study showed 85% of domestic violence victims are women. Unfortunately, these crimes are chronically underreported. Fewer than a fifth of injuries sustained from domestic violence are reported. But there are programs to help. Casa Minha helps by providing emergency and transitional housing, counseling services, and educational opportunities. Our reporter Yujing Lee is live to give us details on how the shelter has affected families. Yujing?
Thank you, Joy. Domestic violence is one of those issues that is rarely talked about. 1 in 4 women will experience this during their lifetime. Fortunately, there are places like Casa Minha that give women and their families a second chance to rebuild their lives.
So oftentimes people will say, well, I don't understand why she just doesn't leave. Leave and go where? Leave and go where? Because once she's left at home, now she's homeless.
It's easier said than done. That was the case for Anisabel before she reached out to Casa Minha for help.
I depended on my partner. Like, he supported me, he provided everything for me. I didn't have to go to work. And once all that went away, I had to go on my own and start a new life.
When she finally found the courage to end the abuse, it wasn't just for herself.
I decided to just cut it. I have a son, and I didn't want him to grow up in that environment. So I just decided to move on with my life and just leave that behind. I didn't want him to just grow up in that situation, seeing that, and probably end up being the same way once he's a grown-up.
Casa Minha is there to help every step of the way. There are services from counseling to housing to a 24/7 hotline. Families in need are sheltered for 6 months while they can get back on their feet. And Isabel found the meaning of love and support again.
Well, they helped me a lot. As soon as I came in, they were really nice. The staff, everybody, just like a family. And here they helped me with everything. They gave me all the resources they have about healthcare, everything I needed basically. They provided it to me.
Marquise Jameson is a man who works at the shelter. It takes some time to break the ice, but he finds it rewarding to be a positive male role model.
Usually when the women first get here, they hate seeing my face. Like, literally, you can see the reaction. Like, their body language says, like, don't get too close. And that's because of the trauma. But I like to think that, like, once I talk to them a little bit, like, I'm not very abrasive. Like, I have a soft voice. They tend to really, like, you know, enjoy my company. They like to talk to me. So it's nice because it makes me feel like a role model, especially for the children who have seen men as, like, you know, just kind of not in the best light. You know, they've been traumatized.
Jameson hopes that domestic violence will be resolved from both sides of the story someday.
I would love to see the community volunteer more as far as not making it so taboo to talk about in-home violence. It would be awesome if you work with the abusers as well as the ones that are abused, because then you end a cycle in that way, working with both parties. Because we're helping the abusers continue to do what they do, whether it's with their previous partner or a future partner or, you know, whoever they're with. I think we have to kind of find what the root of the problem is and work in that sense so we can almost eliminate the problem altogether.
Domestic violence has no face. There is no type of victim. That it is not based on race. It is not based on socioeconomics.
Just like Deborah says, domestic violence can happen to anyone at any time. And just to let you know, for those who are affected, there is someone out there. Reporting live from Boston, I'm Yujing Lee. Back to you, Joy.
Thanks, Yujing. If you or anyone you know is suffering from domestic abuse, has questions, or is just looking for mental support, you can visit www.casamirna.org or call the hotline 1-877-521-2601. And coming up, we will take a look at a nonprofit that not only works with victims of domestic violence, but helps drug addicts clean up. Stay tuned. Welcome back to WEBN's special edition about nonprofits. The Elizabeth Stone House provides emergency shelter and transitional housing to homeless individuals and families. They are often affected by domestic violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. A recent study for the homeless shows over this past year, about 7,000 families have been helped by emergency shelters in Massachusetts. And more than 35% of the adults admitted to homeless shelters have chronic substance abuse issues. Our correspondent Garrett Turner tells us how the Stone House handles issues of drug abuse and homelessness.
Watching a woman get her self-esteem, watching her have an income, and feeling like she's worthy, yeah, that's my favorite part. Yeah.
Tara Dindy loves her job at the Elizabeth Stone House. She and a team of about 30 workers commit themselves to helping families who are suffering from domestic violence, substance abuse, mental illness, and homelessness.
The people that come into our facility for support are all mostly from the neighborhood. The people who come in on a weekly basis for groups is a large amount of people. They come in for one-on-one conversations, safety planning, financial support, might be behind in the rent, might be behind on the bill, and we support them and follow them and teach them how to keep a budget and to maintain their household.
Because one commonality tying all the clients together is poverty.
You can look at statistics on domestic violence, for example, and it cuts across all classes, it cuts across all ethnic groups, and sort of a national level, that's the truth. But here where we are, most of the domestic violence clients that we see are poor.
And this is what a typical apartment looks like for those seeking shelter at the Stone House. One large kitchen, living area, and 2 or 3 bedrooms. Sometimes more than one family is housed in one apartment. And so, one of the major goals the Stone House sets for each client is to help them become more independent. Nancy Owens Hess is the first executive director of the nonprofit. She says the organization is working on a model to help women become individuals who go to work every day and become a part of the rest of us. Financial stability is the key.
One of the things we're trying to do, a lot of the folks that come to either live here or come to groups have grown up without a very fundamental sense of community. And it's very hard to build a community if you don't know what that is. So part of what our job is that very amorphous thing of saying, in order to be a citizen, a good citizen, you need to understand how communities work.
And without independence, stability, and a sense of community, May says the client could be further in over their heads than they were when they started.
People who are surviving domestic violence may wind up back with their batterers for purely financial reasons. If you're in financial distress, the likelihood of relapse, if you have a history of substance abuse, is greater. And if you have mental health problems, financial instability hurts.
And now Garrett is live in Boston. Garrett, tell us about the woman who told you her story at the Stone House.
Thanks, Troy. These days, drug abuse is very common, but there are those people who are dealing with their issues and taking responsibility for their actions. I spoke with Tavery Forts, who has 2 children. She has been struggling with substance abuse, and she told me how the Elizabeth Stone House has helped her.
I grew in love with the drugs. I eventually ended up loving the drugs more than my children.
It was a blessing in disguise when Tavery Fort's 14-year-old son stopped talking to her. It was only then she finally realized what she was doing.
It's not something that they're not forcing the issue or not putting stress on me because of who I was. They're trying to help me basically find out who I am and who I want to be, and at the same time help me reunite with my children.
Forts is one of 300 people that stay in the Boston area Elizabeth Stone houses. The houses are committed to giving families and their children a positive atmosphere to live in.
So the kinds of things that we see when kids come in here, they have been through trauma, they have experienced either through their community or at home some type of violence, or where they live is very violent, you know, war zone sometimes, you know, a lot of gangs and things like that going on in the community. And when they come in, they see adults who aren't yelling at them, who aren't trying to hurt them, who it's okay when you maybe yell and scream and throw things, and it's okay because you know what, we'll deal with that situation, and then 5 minutes later we're starting right up back at square one. So it's always a clean slate.
Now, the Elizabeth Stone house is giving Forts and other families a second chance. Forts told me while she was using drugs, her children wouldn't even see her or talk to her. Now that she is getting treatment at the Stone house, she gets to see her children every day. Reporting live from Boston, I'm Garrett Turner.
Thank you, Garrett. If you'd like to get involved with the Elizabeth Stone House, you can visit www.elizabethstonehouse.org for more information. Coming up, we'll see how domestic violence and drug abuse can affect children. We'll be right back. Welcome back to WEBN Special Edition Nonprofits. We've talked with women and their families about how domestic violence and drug abuse have changed their lives. And these families are at least fortunate to have each other. But there are so many children around the world who can't say the same. Over 150 million children worldwide are orphans. Every year, about 25,000 children in America grow up in foster care systems until the age of 18. 25% of them become homeless. Over half enter the unemployment rate. About 30% of male foster children end up in jail. And the same percentage of females experience early parenthood. That's why Ben Schumacher founded the Memory Project. It's an unconventional method of using creativity to give orphans a lasting keepsake. Reporter Joelle David has more on the story.
If a picture is worth 1,000 words, how many words is a painted portrait worth? Sharon Santillo thinks the Memory Project proves how powerful portraits can be.
I'm an art teacher, and I'm a member of the National Art Education Association. I was at a conference, and I was walking down the hallway, and there were postcards on the table, and there was one that said the Memory Project. And I picked it up, and I read about it, making portraits of orphans around the world, delivering them to these orphans, and then giving the artist who made the portrait a photo of the child holding the portrait.
Ben Schumacher is the founder of the Memory Project and says his travels inspired the idea.
I was spending some time at an orphanage in Guatemala, and while I was there, I just happened to have a conversation with a Guatemalan man who described how he had grown up in an orphanage himself, and he didn't have any photos from his childhood. In fact, he didn't have any personal keepsakes at all.
So Sharon brought the Memory Project to her weekly art group, and it was a hit with her fellow artists.
I thought it was a really beautiful idea to give orphans who don't have anything like that, to let them have portraits of themselves. And my little boy was so beautiful.
Sharon was even able to change a few people's minds.
You know, that's Sharon Santillo. She is a member of the sketch group and just such a wonderful person. And she comes up with these ideas. Typically, when she comes up with the idea, I say, oh, that's not for me. But she kind of pushed on it, and she was very excited about it. I said, oh, what the heck, I'll give it a try. And I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Almost all the kids that we have in the Memory Project, their basic needs are pretty much taken care of. And then you can really start addressing some of these emotional needs, these psychological needs. And I think that the portraits are kind of a unique way to add a little bit of color to their lives in that way. A lot of the kids, when they receive the portraits, it's a day that will always be in their memory.
Sharon has done the memory project with both children and adults and found that they both connected with their orphans in different ways.
The children seem to be connecting to the idea of an orphan, of someone growing up without a mom, without a dad, without a family. They seem to be relating more to that universal. But the adults seem to make a very personal connection. I remember Cambia Davis saying, she was calling this my orphan.
And the memory project doesn't stop here. Sharon Centillo plans to continue sending portraits with her students and the artist group. Reporting for WEBN News, I'm Joelle David.
And we'd like to thank Ben Schumacher for sending WEBN the video about the memory project. If you'd like to start your own project, you can contact him at ben@thememoryproject.org. Up next, we'll see how former prisoners are taking steps towards rebuilding their lives. And after that, how exactly do nonprofits stay afloat? Stay tuned. Welcome back. We've talked about domestic violence, drug abuse, and children who may never know their biological parents. But another major sector of nonprofit service is with those who were sent to prison. Our reporter Angeline Vo is going to take us through SPAN Inc.
About 3 million people in the U.S. are in prison, and 95% of prisoners will leave at some point. And if the inmate doesn't have a plan or any support from loved ones, where will the inmate go? What will the inmate do once he or she's left? If these questions don't have clear answers, it is more likely that the inmate will fall back into old illegal habits and back to prison. That is why SPAN Inc. is here to help. It is a nonprofit organization that helps those who are or have been in prison to achieve healthy, productive, and meaningful lives. SPAN helps by providing intensive support services for over 7,000 men and women in Massachusetts. A staff of over 30 people work with clients by providing a personalized combination of case management, health services, career development, and counseling support. This helps clients reintegrate into their communities as assets rather than liabilities. The founder and director of SPAN Inc., Lynn Levi, believes that not only will the inmate be healthier, but we would make our communities safer by providing a financial alternative to repeated incarceration. SPAN's average annual cost to help one client is $4,000, compared to the $46,000 to incarcerate one state inmate. You do the math. SPAN sees more than 1,200 clients a year, and today, SPAN is the longest-running Boston-based agency whose sole mission is dedicated to prisoners and ex-prisoners who want to change their lives. But running organizations like SPAN Inc. is never easy. In order for these orgs to help those in need, they must be financially stable. Reporter Max Bronner spoke with Jennifer Aronson of the Boston Foundation. She told WEBN what needs to happen for these orgs to stay alive.
Well, you can make some change and some progress through direct grant making, either supporting great organizations on the ground or starting individual initiatives. You need to also look at the larger system, not just small groups of individuals or individual organizations. And that system-wide change or state-wide change happens on a policy level.
And the Boston Foundation likes to refer to these policies as think tank policies. Simply put, TBF is an organization that invests in other nonprofit organizations and also start their own initiatives when they see fit. Jennifer Aronson has been with the Boston Foundation for 7 years, and she describes how this foundation helps those in need.
There are three legs to our stool. So the first is we think about our impact directly in the communities. We make grants across 8 strategies, 2 strategies that are focused on education, structural reform and college completion, arts, health, housing, economic development, public safety, and career advancement.
And the foundation grants more than $80 million in all aspects of community building annually. But not only do nonprofits receive federal funding and donations from organizations like TBF, A lot of their funding comes from generous donations, and TBF works with individual donors to set up their own advised funds to be used for philanthropic purposes.
In many cases, in most cases actually, an individual knows that they want to be active, say in the arts or in education or some area, and then we help them develop a strategy to be active in those areas.
Now Aronson says she's not sure if the government has an obligation to help nonprofit organizations, but always has an obligation to help the most vulnerable citizens. But our friends from Casa Minha and Elizabeth Stonehouse think the government has a tremendous responsibility to help.
We need to make sure that all of our citizens are have the basic needs, have access to, and so I do think that we certainly have, as a society, have responsibility.
We're going to pay on one end or the other, and so you have to ask yourself, do you want to pay on the front end? Do you want to provide services that change lives, or do you want to pay on the back end? I mean, do you want to put your money into having people get jobs and work and pay taxes, or do you want to put money into prisons and mental hospitals and things that when it doesn't work, that's where our citizens end up? It's a choice. People have to make a choice. Front end, back end.
Everybody needs help sometime. Everybody can help sometime. And whenever we're in need of help, we look to others to help us out.
Because nonprofit organizations are the fastest growing sector in the economy. And this means more of your neighbors, relatives, and friends are in need of your help. Whether it's donating money, gifts, or simply talking to someone that's in need of your support, there is always a way for you to help. In Boston, Max Bronner, WEBN.
If you'd like to help any of the nonprofits we've explored, you can find more information by logging on to www.webn.tv for a list of all of the organizations mentioned on the show. Thank you for watching this special edition. I'm Joy Powers. Goodbye and see you next time.